This remarkable story took place in Sweden, a land renowned for its endless forests, sparkling lakes, and serene natural beauty. From an early age, Alexander showed a deep love for animals and a profound respect for nature's quiet majesty. He was the kind of child who would spend hours wandering through the woods, marveling at the way sunlight trickled through the canopy and listening to birds singing their morning chorus. As he grew older, his passion for wildlife blossomed into a clear goal. He would become a veterinarian. He enrolled in a prestigious veterinary program where he worked tirelessly in both lecture halls and labs, determined to transform his childhood fascination into a practical skill that could help animals in need. His passion and diligence carried him through the rigors of academia, and before long he was a newly minted veterinarian, ready to face any challenge the profession could throw at him. The early days of his practice were busy but exhilarating. Each morning, Alexander rose before dawn, reviewed his appointment schedule, then began treating a wide range of patients, from frisky dogs with sprained paws to wary cats in need of vaccinations. Occasionally, more exotic cases would come in: an injured crow, a rescued hedgehog, or even a weary fox cub that someone had found by the roadside. Over time, Alexander's clientele grew to include local farmers, pet owners, and wildlife services seeking a reliable vet for emergencies involving wild creatures. Word spread that he was not only skilled, but deeply empathetic, someone who saw beyond an animal's symptoms to the living soul underneath. He poured his heart into his work, and in turn, his work began to consume most of his waking hours. Though his days were long, Alexander relished each success. His operating table became a place where small miracles happened. Rehabilitated birds learned to fly again, limping dogs regained their playful exuberance, and timid cats found healing after traumatic injuries. Every time he saw a relieved owner carry a recovering pet home, it felt like a victory. But as the months turned into years, Alexander realized that the emotional weight of his calling was starting to take a toll. Not every case ended happily, and the heartbreak of losing an animal sometimes struck him so hard that he spent sleepless nights wondering what more he could have done. His close friends and colleagues recognized the strain in his eyes before he did. They noticed the way he sometimes lingered at the clinic well past midnight, poring over medical journals or rechecking charts for patients who had already gone home. They urged him to consider taking breaks, to step away for a day or two, and reconnect with the natural world he loved so much. The more they insisted, the more he understood that he had been ignoring his own mental and emotional needs. Finally, after a particularly grueling week filled with critical cases, he decided he had to heed their advice. To restore his energy, Alexander traveled to a secluded area near the edge of a sprawling Swedish nature reserve. There, he purchased a modest log cabin nestled among the trees. It was little more than a small kitchen, a living area, and a single bedroom, but it backed onto endless acres of wild forest. The moment he set foot on the property, he knew he had found his sanctuary. Birds sang from the high branches, the wind rustled through the birch leaves, and even the light seemed gentler, filtered through layer upon layer of emerald foliage. Alexander spent the first day simply sitting on his porch, absorbing the sounds and scents around him. No longer did he hear the buzz of city traffic or the shrill ring of his clinic's telephone. Instead, there was the whisper of the wind, the chatter of squirrels, and the occasional flapping of distant wings. This quiet lullaby began to mend the frayed edges of his spirit, and for the first time in years, he felt truly at peace. He decided to make full use of his stay by exploring the nearby trails. Early the next morning, he laced up a trusty pair of hiking boots, donned a thick jacket against the crisp air, and set out into the forest. Sweden's woodlands have a sort of fairy tale grandeur: towering evergreens, mossy floors that spring beneath each step, and lichen-covered rocks that look as if they might have stories of their own to tell. Alexander breathed in the scent of pine resin and damp earth, feeling tension melt away from his shoulders with each stride. After about an hour of leisurely walking, he reached a small clearing. At one end stood a cluster of wild blueberry bushes, and near the other, he could just make out the faint glimmer of a stream. As he approached to refill his water bottle, something moved in the distance, an unmistakable shape prowling at the edge of the trees. Heart pounding, Alexander realized he was looking at a lynx. Although he had grown up with a reverence for wildlife, Wild lynxes were rare enough in those parts that encountering one face-to-face felt surreal. He could tell from its size and gait that this was a female lynx, a mother, most likely. As she wandered closer, Alexander caught sight of a small kitten trailing behind her, padding clumsily through the undergrowth. Knowing how protective mother lynxes can be, he froze and contemplated his next move. Making loud noises to scare the lynx away might work, but it could also provoke her if she felt threatened. Running was out of the question. A lynx could easily outmaneuver him if it decided to chase. Before he could decide, the mother lynx lifted her head, sniffed the air, and locked eyes with Alexander. He sensed no immediate aggression in her posture, but his heart thumped against his ribcage nevertheless. She took a few cautious steps forward. Alexander slowly backed away, scanning the ground for a potential escape route in case things escalated. Yet to his astonishment, the mother lynx did not growl or lash out. Instead, she let out a low, rasping call and turned as though beckoning him to follow her deeper into the forest. On any other day, with any other lynx, Alexander would have been too wary to comply. But something about her behavior, her apparent agitation coupled with a startling lack of hostility, intrigued him. In his years of practice, he had occasionally treated orphaned lynxes brought to him by wildlife authorities. Though he considered himself knowledgeable, this was the first time he had ever encountered a wild mother lynx acting so strangely. Against his better judgment, curiosity and compassion propelled him forward, step by cautious step, until he found himself trailing behind her. She led him through a maze of towering pines and thick ferns. Morning light streamed between the trunks, illuminating shimmering patches of dew. Every so often, she would pause, glance back, and emit another soft call. Alexander's adrenaline surged, but he continued, fueled by a hunch that she needed help. Eventually, they arrived at a fast-flowing river. The roar of it filled his ears, and he noticed scattered debris along the shoreline. Tangled fishing lines, broken nets, and other refuse left behind by fishermen. It was then that he saw the source of the lynx's distress. A second kitten was caught in a heap of old fishing net, bobbing in the current. Each surge of water threatened to pull the poor creature under. The kitten flailed, tiny paws scrabbling against the tangled fibers, its eyes wide with panic. The mother had clearly tried to tear the net apart with her claws. Ragged shreds of rope still clung to her front paws, but her efforts had failed. She stood close to the bank, her ears flat against her head, clearly terrified for her little one. Alexander didn't hesitate. The veterinarian in him took over. He darted along the river's edge until he found a sharp, flat piece of stone. Though he had no surgical tools or even a simple pocket knife, he hoped this rock would be enough to slice through the stubborn netting. Carefully, he waded into the river, gasping as the cold water rose to his thighs. The current tugged at him, but he pressed forward until he reached the trapped kitten. Its eyes were wide with terror, and the mother lynx let out a tense, anxious sound from the shore. She was uneasy but did not attack, perhaps sensing that Alexander was there to help. Balancing himself against the force of the water, Alexander began sawing at the net. The stone was crude, and he had to be exceedingly careful not to injure the kitten. More than once he slipped, slicing his fingers on the harsh ropes. Warm blood mingled with the frigid river water, sending jolts of pain up his arm. Still, he continued, propelled by a mix of fear, compassion, and adrenaline. Little by little, the strands of the net began to snap and loosen. Finally, with one last slash, the kitten sprang free. Alexander grabbed the small, shivering creature and lifted it into his arms, stumbling as a strong current buffeted him. He fought to regain his footing and made his way back to the shore, where the mother lynx paced frantically, letting out soft, distressed cries. The moment he set the kitten down, it scrambled on wobbly legs toward its mother. She immediately began to groom the kitten's drenched fur, as if to confirm it was truly safe and alive. Exhausted, Alexander sank to his knees on the pebble-strewn bank, trying to catch his breath. Only then did he notice that the other kitten, the first one he had seen, had approached within a few meters of him. It peered at him with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. The mother lynx was so focused on the rescued kitten that she barely paid Alexander any mind, apart from glancing in his direction as though to ensure he posed no further threat. Finally satisfied that both kittens were unharmed, she nosed them gently away from the water and up the embankment, disappearing into the thick undergrowth beyond. Alexander sat there for a long time, water streaming from his clothes, his heart still pounding. What had just happened felt more like a dream than reality. A wild creature seeking his help, trusting him, and then leaving without so much as a hiss of warning. As the adrenaline faded, he examined his hands, crisscrossed with cuts. They stung fiercely, but a deep sense of relief and triumph washed over him. He had saved the kitten's life and witnessed something profoundly moving, a silent, instinctual cooperation between man and beast. He returned to his cabin that evening, drained and euphoric all at once. Night descended over the forest like a velvet curtain, the stars emerging in crystal clarity overhead. Every muscle in his body ached, and his hands throbbed from the cuts. He cleaned and bandaged them, then sank onto the porch with a cup of hot tea. The events of the day replayed in his mind, each moment charged with emotion. He wondered if anyone would ever believe him. More than that, he wondered if the Lynx family was truly safe now, or if they had more challenges awaiting them in the wild. Sleep came fitfully. He dreamt of the mother lynx standing by the river, her eyes both wise and sad, silently imploring him to act. In the morning, Alexander awoke with the sun filtering through the cabin windows, painting bands of gold across the wooden floor. His body felt sore, and his bandaged hands throbbed, but he also experienced a renewed sense of vigor. For too long, he had dedicated himself to saving animals one clinic visit at a time, forgetting how vast and interconnected the natural world truly was. Yesterday's events had reminded him why he had become a veterinarian in the first place, to help animals, whether they had owners or roamed freely in the wild. He sat on his porch, sipping coffee from a tin mug, when a faint rustling made him look up. To his utter astonishment, he saw the same lynx family at the edge of the clearing. The mother lynx seemed calm, her kittens close by her side. One of them, likely the rescued one, peered at Alexander curiously. The mother lynx kept her distance, but there was an almost peaceful energy in the way she held herself. It felt as though she had come to express some intangible form of gratitude, even if only by a quiet, unthreatening presence. They stayed for perhaps a minute or two, time that seemed to stretch out in the morning light, before the mother lynx flicked her tail and retreated back into the forest with her kittens. Alexander watched them go, heart swelling with emotions he couldn't fully name. In that brief moment, he felt a bond with these creatures, a bond that transcended words, culture, or even species. Although his hands continued to burn from the cuts, Alexander rose from the chair, invigorated by what he had witnessed. He spent the next few days at the cabin, tending to his minor injuries, exploring the trails and allowing the rhythmic pulse of nature to calm his mind. He caught glimpses of other forest dwellers, moose picking their way among saplings, foxes darting after small prey, flocks of migrating birds forging south. Each sighting felt like a gift, a reminder of just how alive the world outside his clinic walls could be. When his short retreat finally drew to a close, Alexander packed up his belongings and headed back to town, feeling more balanced than he had in years. The clang of the clinic's metal doors and the hum of fluorescent lights greeted him as he reopened his practice, but he approached his work with a renewed spirit. Clients noticed the change in him too. His empathy, once overshadowed by exhaustion, now radiated more clearly than ever. He listened more intently, explained treatments more thoroughly, and seemed to handle stressful situations with a newfound calm. The story of his lynx encounter spread among his colleagues and friends, often eliciting gasps of disbelief. Some teased him, calling the event a tall tale exaggerated by an overactive imagination. Others reacted with awe, believing wholeheartedly that his kindness and skill had truly led a wild creature to seek his aid. Alexander didn't mind their varied reactions. Deep in his heart, he knew the truth of what had happened by the river. He didn't need universal validation. The memory of those trusting eyes, that silent plea for help, was enough. Weeks passed, then months, and Alexander remained as busy as ever at the clinic, though he made sure to schedule regular visits to his cabin. Each time he ventured into the forest, he secretly hoped to see the lynx family again, but it seemed they had moved on to other parts of the wilderness. Perhaps they had found a territory richer in hares, fish, or safety from human encroachment. Though he never crossed paths with them again, he took comfort in imagining them living contentedly among the pines. His experience became a personal parable, a testament to the power of empathy and the unpredictable ways in which life can present opportunities for compassion. He reflected often on how close he had come to missing that chance. Had he turned around at the first glimpse of the lynx or run away in fear, the kitten might have drowned in the tangled net. Instead, by listening to the unspoken signals the mother lynx gave him, he had acted as a bridge between two worlds, the civilized realm of human skill and tools, and the wild domain where animals must fend for themselves. From then on, whenever a grueling day at the clinic tested his limits, Alexander recalled the river rescue. He remembered the sensation of icy water soaking his clothes, the sting of rope cuts on his hands, and the indescribable relief of seeing that little kitten reunited with its mother. That memory served as an anchor, reminding him of why he had chosen this path and why it mattered. It was a lesson not only in veterinary science, but in humility, recognizing that humans, despite our technology and knowledge, are still part of a larger ecosystem governed by instinct and cooperation in moments of dire need. The following spring brought new challenges to his clinic: an outbreak of a contagious canine virus, a rash of farm accidents, and several cases of severe malnourishment in wild animals due to an unusually harsh winter. Alexander worked tirelessly, supporting his team and implementing protocols that saved countless animal lives. Though the workload was intense, he felt more capable than ever. Late one afternoon, after tending to a particularly complex surgery, he stepped outside for a breath of fresh air. A cool breeze carried the scent of blooming lilacs from a nearby garden, and for a moment he closed his eyes and imagined he was back by the river, hearing the rush of water and the frantic cries of a trapped kitten. That evening, as he locked up, he found himself lingering by the door. He gazed at the pine silhouettes on the horizon, illuminated by the soft glow of twilight. In that peaceful moment, Alexander silently thanked the lynx for reminding him that compassion could transcend fear, that sometimes the best thing a person can do is heed an unspoken call for help, even from a creature that might otherwise see him as a threat. In the months and years that followed, Alexander's reputation as the town's most dedicated veterinarian grew even stronger. Locals brought him wounded owls, orphaned rabbits, and stray dogs, confident that he would find a way to help them. Each new challenge was met with patience and a sense of stewardship that Alexander felt bound him not just to his patients, but to all living things. Though he didn't always share the full story, the lynx rescue became something of a legend around town, whispered among neighbors and repeated around campfires near the edge of the forest. Some claim the lynxes could still be seen, prowling the deep woods and occasionally glimpsed near the old stream. Others said the mother lynx had grown old and her kittens had matured, venturing out to start families of their own. Alexander didn't speculate. He liked to picture them thriving somewhere far away, living the quiet, instinct-driven lives they were meant to. Occasionally, visitors came to his clinic, not just for veterinary services, but also to hear the tale from the man who lived it. He would smile politely and recount a simpler version, how he had stumbled upon a mother lynx trying to free her kitten from a fishing net, and how he had mustered the courage to help. He omitted details like the intense cold of the river, the pain of slicing his fingers on the rope, or the raw fear he felt in those critical moments, largely because no words could capture the depth of that experience. More importantly, he wanted people to understand that the core of the story wasn't about heroics, it was about empathy, that profound instinct to alleviate suffering, whether the sufferer walks on 2 legs or 4. And so life continued in that sleepy Swedish town. Over time, Alexander broadened his practice to include educational programs for local children, hoping to instill in them the same wonder and respect for nature that he had felt as a child. He volunteered at wildlife conservation events, taught basic veterinary care to farmers and pet owners, and periodically collaborated with regional wildlife authorities on rescue missions. Each project reminded him that the health of an ecosystem depends on understanding and compassion at every level, from the smallest insect to the mightiest predator. Though the lynx family never returned to his porch, their memory remained a vivid source of guidance. On particularly challenging days, Alexander would revisit the cabin, follow the river trail, and recall that pivotal morning. He could almost see the mother lynx turning to look at him, the fear and desperation in her eyes replaced by a glimmer of hope as he waded into the water. It affirmed his belief that the boundaries we place between humanity and the wild are sometimes more permeable than we realize. In extraordinary moments, a shared goal, like saving a life, can unite us across that divide in ways both humbling and awe-inspiring. In the end, Alexander's life was enriched, not just by the skills he gained through his veterinary work, but by the insight that compassion knows no species, no strict boundaries. He learned that despite the tension and fear that can exist between human beings and wild animals, there can also be moments of grace, moments when our shared capacity for concern overrides every other consideration. Those moments, rare as they may be, illuminate the best aspects of life on Earth and remind us that we are all part of something larger and more mysterious than we often care to admit.